back to the official Sasquatch and Squirrel Show. The last episode that we did, we alluded to the origins of Hansel and Gretel. So that's going to be our topic for the day on this episode.
Woohoo. I want to go ahead and apologize for my voice. I am currently under the weather dealing with a cold. Yippee.
I mean, we're used to your voice sucking, so it's okay.
Dick.
Anyway, I'm kidding. But no. So everybody's heard the tale of Hansel and Gretel, but where most people don't know is where it came from. So two brothers, they're known as the Brothers Grimm. They are responsible for the tale of Snow White and Seven Dwarfs, Hansel and Gretel, and a whole bunch of other ones as well. These two brothers, they were German in the 1800s. Their country was being ravaged by the Napoleonic War, and they wanted to preserve German culture. So they found these stories, and one of them was Hansel and Gretel. It was about these two kids that get lost in the woods. They find a house made of gingerbread and cake, and there's a witch and all this other stuff. Well, the true origins are much darker than that. There was a famine in the 1300s, in the same area in like the middle of Europe. That's when agriculture really became popular, and they had more access to food, they had more access to resources. So people started having children. Well, the more people you have, the more resources dwindle, usually. And that's kind of what happened here. People couldn't afford to feed their kids, so they would, in some cases, take them out to the woods and let them die either by starvation or by animals. Because that's you've heard of that old saying, the mother bear, it's forced to eat its cubs so it can survive.
Mm-hmm.
That's where we're going to kick off. So it's going to be a little darker topic, but we'll power through it.
Right. So you want to go with the synopsis of the story?
Yeah, sure. Do you want to do that part?
I'll try to power through it with my voice sucking, but we'll give it a shot here. The story of Hansel and Gretel is there was a family of four. One was a father who was a woodcutter, a stepmother, and two children. And the two children was Hansel and Gretel. There was a famine that was widespread in Europe around this time. And the kids overheard a conversation with their father and stepmother talking about the children and leaving them in the forest to die because, they didn't want to starve themselves. So they needed to preserve all the food they had for this situation.
Mm-hmm.
The father was against the idea at first, but then reluctantly agreed to the quote-unquote evil stepmother's wishes. With that overheard by the children, kids started freaking out, and Hansel said that he was going to go outside and gather some stones that reflected in the moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
Then the next morning, the kids gathered up their gear, went to go camp in the woods at a place that their father prepared for them. And the whole time, Hansel was dropping the stones back from the home. So kids were asleep around the campfire, and the parents left them. And by morning, the kids were actually able to find their way back home because the rocks had reflected in the moonlight.
Mm-hmm.
That right there pretty much pissed off the stepmother.
Mm-hmm.
Kids just come marching their happy ass back on home, but like, here we are.
I'll fucking dare you come back home.
Right.
You little shits. We're trying to kill you. I'll dare you try to survive.
I know, right?
Self-preserving little bastards.
Yeah, there you go. So the next day they were yeeted again.
Mm-hmm.
And this time they went deeper into the forest. And instead of them being able to find their way back with stones, they made sure that there was no stones on them. And the stepmother gave them bread.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Hansel, tried to be the little smart ass that he was before, was breaking off bread and trying to leave a breadcrumb trail.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't work out so well because the wildlife ate it all. That foiled their plans for coming back home.
Yeah.
Now, this right here is the part where minding your own business should have been top priority, but I guess if you're hungry, you'll do anything.
Right.
So they're lost in the forest now. And of course, this is before the time of Google Maps and GPS. So they found a cottage that was made of gingerbread and candy.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a house that diabetes built.
I think so. And my whole thing is with this right here, what was there no critters like eating the house?
I mean, if you want ants, that's how you get ants.
That's how you get ants right there. they start chowing down on the house.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, a woman caught them, came out, invited them into the house, and feeds them and says she'll take care of them. Well, the kids spent the night in the house. They wake up the next morning, and the woman basically revealed that she was a witch. And she locked Hansel in the cage
Mm-hmm.
and made Gretel sweep the floors and feed Hansel and try to get him to
Fattened up.
fatten up.
Yeah.
The witch apparently had bad eyesight. So anytime that she was going in there to try to check to see how fat he was getting,
Mm-hmm.
Hansel, being the kind of brilliant boy that he was instead of uh, putting his own finger through the cage where she could feel how fat he was getting, he would use a bone from a like piece of chicken or something that he used. So
Mm-hmm.
she goes, well, this one right here's not gaining any weight. He must have a hell of a metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, she got fed up with the metabolism thing and said that she was going to cook him regardless. So she's over here firing up the oven and trying to trick uh, Hansel into going into the oven and seeing if it's warm enough. He goes, "How am I supposed to get in there?" And she goes, "Climb. It's big enough even for me to get in." So she kind of demonstrates on how to do it, and both the kids push the crazy bitch into the oven and locks the door on her.
You
And
know,
she's over here burning her ass up.
what is it with Germans and stuffing people in ovens?
I don't know, man. I mean, they're kind of good at it from this point. After this point, the kids go and ransack the house and find all these riches that's in the house that the witch had, and you know, gathered all their shit up and left. Apparently, they didn't have to travel too far. It was right next door to where they lived. So,
How convenient.
right. So they they went into their house. The father was very happy to see him, and they're like, "Where's the stepmother?" Well, apparently his stepmother died. I think he killed her. Why
I
not?
mean, she's kind of a bitch, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I mean, you made the man, yeet his kids into the woods. So, yeah,
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 what you
that
get, you
bitch is dead,
fucking skank.
right? Anyways, with the kids having all the riches and like showing the father the riches and telling him the story, father was cool, just happy to see him and happy to have the money, and
Mhm.
now they were, taken care of and lived happily ever after,
Yeah.
all that. So,
Well, but and that's one of the many many versions of the story, right? Like the one that I read, or he's still in the cage and shoves her into the oven and blah 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 blah. I mean, there's just it's variations on a theme, and and
hmm
it was so, like I alluded to before. Well, actually, you alluded to it, not me. There was the famine, and what caused that famine was a mini ice age in the like 1315 ish area in Europe, and in like
hmm
so food became scarce, and what was available was unaffordable, and not too dissimilar from what we're going through today.
they assumed the thing that actually caused that mini ice age was a volcano or something that was a little further south, and
Right.
all the ash in the air caused the climate to change.
Right. Actually, that grew into a bigger version of the Salem witch trial. But this was actually the worst witch hunt, or the largest and deadliest witch hunt in history.
hmm
And this one, they actually burned people at the stake. So,
Right, right.
mhm.
And like that's where the whole oven thing comes into play because some of these people that were accused of being witches were also accused of killing infants and cooking them inside copper pots
Mhm.
or processing the bodies of the children and cooking them in the ovens and stuff.
Right. And it's also like, but it's funny that most of the witches were accused of being witches, and not even like convicted. Were just accused
Oh yeah.
of, were put to death. But also they were mostly single women. There was a few men sprinkled in there, but 50 children. Yeah, like I think it was like 50 kids were also accused of it and killed, and it also got turned into a political tool,
hmm
like we said before in our Salem witch trials episode. All you have to do is just accuse. It's impossible to show proof that you're not, you know?
Yeah. And plus, if they want you dead, you're gonna die.
Exactly. So, But this is just like I've said before, it's just two guys that wanted to keep their culture alive because the Napoleonic War had ravaged their country in the 1800s. So they had gathered everything they could gather, and it happened to be these types of stories. So there's an American version. It's called The Babes in the Woods. An Appalachian version of it. Pretty similar story. There's a plethora of similar stories. There's a French one that's just exactly like Hansel and Gretel, and it's all variations on a theme. And I think these are cautionary tales.
Yeah,
Be careful, like Baba Yaga and all that stuff. But the thing is, though, is don't listen to John Wick. Baba Yaga is not the boogeyman. Baba Yaga means witch, if I'm not mistaken.
you're right.
So as time progresses, this is where tradition and things like that are important because you start to lose the meaning of things and you don't necessarily, once older generations pass on, you don't, it, the stories lose their meaning, I guess, or they lose their aura, would I guess would be a better word.
Sure. Now the thing about the Germans and such, they have to create a word for everything, and um, they had these, just like you said, cautionary tales, basically called the Kinderfressen,
Mm-hmm.
and that's a child devourer, and they were ghoulish men that had a sack full of children that they would eat, and this is a way to get the children to behave. And I'm like, that's a brutal fucking way to get somebody to behave,
Well,
but hey, if it works,
I mean, technically, most guys walk around with a sack full of children.
I mean, yeah, generally.
Sorry.
A lot of cannibalism going on in this world.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Is like, I mean, listen, okay, cannibalism is fucking terrible. We can all understand that, and I would rather
Yeah.
eat drywall than eat a human being. But it like remember that movie? And this is totally off topic, but fuck it, it's our show. You remember those Chilean soccer players? I think they were.
Oh yeah, yeah. That was Alive.
Yeah, the movie was called Alive.
Mm-hmm.
They crashed in the Andes, I think, and they were on top of a mountain, and they didn't have any food. But you know what they had plenty of?
Butt steaks.
Exactly. Now, did they want to? No, but they had to survive. Now,
Kind of brings a whole new meaning to the word eating ass.
I mean, whatever peels your banana, but
Right.
gross.
Nasty.
You nasty bastard. I think there's like most of these stories, like your Snow Whites and your Cinderellas and all this, they all have a common theme, and one's that stepmother thing.
Yeah.
So I think the reason the stepmother became the wicked stepmother was because back in this time frame, childbirth there was a high mortality rate in childbirth.
Yeah.
So most people had a stepmom, and sometimes they were cruel, but not all the time. And from what the Hansel and Gretel research that I did, this was their biological mother that wanted to remove them from the home so her and the husband could survive. Now, I mean, that's I don't know of a well, Casey Anthony comes to mind, but I mean, allegedly she was acquitted,
Allegedly.
folks. She was acquitted. Okay,
I mean,
but I mean, so was OJ. But anywho, another story for another time. I think that it's basically taking this terrible scenario of a famine and cannibalism and a witch hunt and turning it into it's just I think it's basically just capitalizing on a tragedy. You know,
inspiration can come from all corners.
it's true. Yeah, you're not wrong. But I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think that these are they're good stories. They're decent stories. I don't know. I don't really ever recall sitting down and reading Hansel and Gretel as a child. I had it read to me, and
Yeah, I had it read to me.
Yeah.
We had a bunch of these old, like, fairy tale books and stuff like that. These
Mhm.
things are like I forget what the name of the company was, like Golden Age or something like that. I forget, but yeah, we had a bunch of these books that had different stories in them. But honestly, they were just something that was just clutter in my house because me, I didn't really do a bunch of reading. Now, my brother, on the other hand, he was an avid reader. He could read the phone book front to back in a minute and a half, apparently.
Yeah,
But
no thanks. I mean,
yeah, I never had that skill set. So
no. See, I'm reading the phone book is what I mean. But for me, it's like I used to be an avid reader, but as time has progressed, I just if you want me to fall asleep, you know, like
Yeah, that
I
right
have
there will
a
do it.
yeah, I have a really good nonfiction book sitting on my nightstand right now. It's called Chaos. It's about um, the MK Ultra stuff with the Mansons, and
Mm.
I've had that book for a year, and I have yet to crack it open because I know as soon as I do, it's just going. It's just going to hit me, and I can sit there and Bill Burr said it best. I can watch a YouTube murder mystery for 9 hours straight and not skip a beat. Put a book in front of me, I'm out like a fucking narcolept.
Oh, dude, I tell you, books for me, it's like I'd rather take a beating than try to finish a chapter because I'm constantly counting how many pages are in the chapter, and I'm like, fuck, there's like 10 pages left. I'm never gonna get through this, you know.
Yeah, but I mean, I do. I have to find the right kind of book to get me to read it. So
Yeah,
I guess what the biggest takeaway for me on this is the preservation of the Brothers Grimm's culture,
yeah.
and I don't think there's anything wrong with wanting to preserve one's culture.
No, not at all. Well, I know this was a short episode, and I think my voice is about had all I could stand for one show here. But this is coming out on Halloween. Everybody go out, have a good time, and enjoy yourselves. Don't do anything stupid, and go scare the shit out of somebody without getting shot.
Well, I mean, what if they want to do something stupid, Tim?
I mean, that's up to them.
All right, well, you know where you can find us as usual. Follow the questions.
Find the truth.